Today I'm joined by Dr. Jason Lanter, a psychology professor here at Kutztown University and is also a member of the Drake Group. And today Dr. Lanter has agreed to come speak with us about the NCAA and the image of the student athlete. First off, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Now, we said you're a member of the Drake Group. For those who don't know, what is the Drake Group?
The Drake Group is an organization made up of professors and staff members from various universities across the country. And the goal really is to seek out and maintain academic integrity in the face of commercialized college sports.
Right, and commercially, like you say, commercialized. It's almost like athletes are looked at as they're exploited. Do you believe student athletes are exploited?
Well, I think most, when we talk about big-time athletics, we're primarily talking about football and men's basketball at the Division I level, and maybe some women's basketball programs. And if we look to see what's going on there, the amount of money that's being handed over for television rights, for broadcasting rights, all this type of stuff, that it's hard to argue that they're not being exploited because
they use their likeness, the jerseys, and
that's part of it too. But it's also, are they getting that education in exchange for it?
Right. A lot of people, the argument is that, oh, their payment is in education. Mm-hmm. And do you believe that that's sufficient enough, despite with all the number of hours they have to work per week and all that?
Well, even the NCAA's own statistics contradict their own policy. So athletes are actually working 40 plus hours per week on their athletics, and the NCAA policy is 20 hours per week.
Right.
So there's a contradiction right there in terms of having the opportunity to pursue their education when they're spending the vast majority of their waking time on their actual sport.
Right, like you said, 20 to 25 hours a week is the maximum number of hours they're allowed to. Yet the loophole that often teams will use to go around that is actually they can't have a practice if they have if it's run by coaches. The coach can't be there. That's usually how they get around that.
Captain's practices.
Captain's practices. And speaking of coaches, we looked at statistics. Coaches are usually paid in the millions. Most of the Division I coaches are paid that amount of money. Mm-hmm. Do you feel the coaches are paid too much?
Well, if you look at most of the state employees across the U.S., the highest paid state employee in the vast majority of the states is the football coach at the major state institution.
Wow, that is incredible. So do you feel like the coaches should maybe have their pay cut to help the student athletes a little more with their finances?
Well, I think if you're paying your coach that much, it sends a direct statement about what your priorities are at that institution. And if we're really institutions of higher education, why are we paying this football coach so much money?
Right. And why are the athletes who work all these hours and don't get money, any kind of compensation for it? Do you believe athletes should be paid?
Well, they do get the scholarship, but the major concern that's going on now is the full scholarship doesn't necessarily cover the full cost of attendance. So many athletes are actually falling, even with the full scholarship, they're falling about $2,000 to $3,000 short every year with regards to the basic needs that they need, food, laundry, whatever it may be. Now, in terms of them being paid, it opens up a larger conversation about what do we want in college athletics. Do we want this amateur model that exists, but probably primarily exists in most of the sports we don't see on TV?
Right.
Or do we want a more sort of semi-pro, the pro-legiate model that a friend of mine is called, that currently exists sometimes in football and men's basketball and maybe women's basketball?
So you think if college athletes were to be paid, then there would be two kinds of people. There'd be employees who are not students that are just athletes, and athletes that are not being paid that are students?
Potentially it could go that route. It's a matter of what people want in terms of what the NCAA wants, what the university presidents want, in terms of what model do they want in intercollegiate athletics.
Right. The NCAA has been a mess as of late, and actually, I'm sure you've heard about, the University of Northwestern, they have recently won a bid to become unionized. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's extremely important case, and we need to see what actually happens with it, because right now they just received the opportunity to unionize. And it's starting with the football players, and of course the football coach is saying don't unionize. But we'll see how many football players sign on, but also it allows other athletes from other sports to sign on as well. Now, that case only pertains to private schools. So Stanford, Notre Dame, could be others in which this could happen. We'll see what actually happens. Although recently there has been movements both in Nebraska and Connecticut within the state legislature to approve the same type of opportunity for unions for athletes in those states. Now, in direct opposition, there was also some recent news out of Ohio that in another bill or law, they're going to add some statement that student athletes cannot unionize. So trying to set a precedent before that even becomes a particular issue in Ohio. But we don't know where it's going to go at this point. I think that the major thing, and I think the real reason that this case was moved forward in terms of Northwestern, is that the National Labor Relations Board, is that they saw the number of hours that they worked, and it was 40 plus, that they were practicing on their sport. Okay?
Right.
And they viewed that as a full-time job because it was 40 plus hours a week. And I think that really kind of contradicts that amateur status of the student athlete at many of our major institutions.
Right, and like you mentioned, amateurism, that's something that I believe there's very little semblance of left in college athletics. But do you think the NCAA sort of pockets too much money? And for lack of a better term, I don't exactly mean pocketing for their own personal gain, but I mean they generate around $16 billion a year. What do you think they do with all that money?
Well, and realize that the money they generate is nonprofit because the NCAA, so it's relatively tax-free. There's some business part of it that is taxed, but it's relatively nonprofit. I would like to see more go back to the institutions. Now, the NCAA will tell you that a lot of the money does go back to the institutions, but I'd like to see where it's actually directed because a lot of it goes back into athletics and it doesn't quite make it to the academic mission of the institution. I mean, we have nice, great sport facilities, but we also have major classrooms that need repairs and residence halls that need repairs. So that money could go a long way to help the general student body.
Right. Why not, build a new building or get more, make the library bigger instead of just making stuff that just helps out the athletic department.
Yeah.
And I want to bring another subject up with you. Recently, University of North Carolina, had this scandal that just came out of nowhere that a student athlete wrote an essay for a class, if you can call it that. And the essay was really a paragraph on Rosa Parks, written in a very elementary style, and the student received an A- for the class.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this whole, fake classes scandal that's been going on?
Yeah, the North Carolina case is probably the most severe example that we've seen in terms of academic pure dishonesty at this point. Fake classes, instructor not even present, mostly for athletes. In terms of some of the summer courses were basically the vast majority athletes, and that's it. There were relatively no non-athletes in those courses. North Carolina is still uncovering that and trying to figure out what's going on. So the Drake Group has actually honored Mary Willingham, who's a tutor in the athletic center, and also Professor Jay Smith the last 2 years for their work in terms of standing up and being a whistleblower for what was going on there. And a lot of credit should also go out to the reporters at the Raleigh News and Observer for really uncovering the facts.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is we don't know how long this goes back. We don't know how many athletes are involved. We don't know how many courses, how many grades at this point. They've only opened a certain window that they can trace it back at this point. So we don't know. We know the end, but we don't know the beginning of this.
Right, and this could, for all we know, this could date back years. University of Miami dated all the way back to, was it the 80s or the 90s? I think it was the 90s.
Yeah, in terms of when they did stuff.
Usually this stuff's usually been going on for a while. And one thing I also wanted to ask about is, I'll just bring back up amateurism. Do you believe that, the NCAA, you believe that the college athletics need to have a independent governing body watching over everything?
I think it's important, but it's difficult when the governing body is the one who enforces the rules and also makes the rules.
And gets all the money.
Yeah, so there's a definite contradiction in terms of what they're trying to achieve there. What may happen is the Big Five conferences may decide that they don't need the NCAA anymore. I mean, why do they need the middleman? Because the middleman's taken a lot of that money. Right. And if it comes to that, and they got to realize that those conferences and those conference commissioners hold a lot of power in terms of decision making. And also most of the decisions that come out of the NCAA are made by Division I athletics.
They are the fuel that runs the engine. They generate the most money.
Yep.
But I know that because I'll bring that up while we're at it. This is a Division II school. We're at Kutztown University. Do you see that, say, if this unionization expands to even public schools, do you see that it possibly expanding all the way to Division II and Division III sports?
I mean, it potentially can. I mean, the major difference that we're seeing with the conversations right now is that we're talking about athletes on full scholarships. In the Division II schools, they're kind of in that in-between point where there are some scholarships, there's some amount of money, but there's also a lot of partial scholarships that athletes get at KU and other Division II institutions. At Division III, there aren't any athletic scholarships.
Right.
And so I think that the major issue is what money are they getting and how is that going to be used? I'm not sure if it'll bleed down in a way to the Division II and Division III for a unionization effort. But I think athletes are finally realizing that they have one of the strongest voices that they can bring it together with concerns about what's happening in intercollegiate athletics.
Right. Student athletes are public figures pretty much these days. Do you believe that they're being exploited as a consumer product?
I mean, at the Division I level, yeah. I mean, they're the only person that cannot make money off of their image is themselves. And there's actually, I believe there's a line in their scholarship release form that is basically they give their image away forever and in perpetuity across the universe. And basically sign it over to the NCAA. So the NCAA has the right to use it, schools have the right to use it, conferences have the right to use it, television networks have the right to use it, but the athlete is known his or her own image that they see in the mirror every single day.
Wow, that's an amazing fact. I did not know that. Now, just going back to the Drake Group, that's what we probably here for to talk about. With all of these recent transactions and transgressions, what have you and the Drake Group done to, try to achieve your goal and maintain academic integrity?
Well, I mean, we've always honored, we present a Robert Maynard Hutchins Award every year to someone who has stood up for academic integrity. And many times it's really at the face of potentially losing their job or career. So really being a stand-up, and that's where we were able to honor Mary Willingham and Jay Smith these last couple of years for what has happened in North Carolina. What we've done in the past, we help support a student-athlete Right to Know Act in the state of Connecticut. So information about cost of attendance, full scholarships, information with regards to what is covered if there was a major injury, and more information like that was part of that. Because athletes need to know this. It's basically part of recruiting. If something happens, what is going to be covered? And so we've worked on that, and we're hoping to expand that into other states as well. We're also currently working at the federal level, trying to get some updates to a bill that's going to make some major changes to college athletics.
Well, that's great. It's great that we have someone who is a member of the Drake Group working right here in Kutztown. Okay, well, thank you very much for the time. That's all we have. We do really appreciate learning a lot more about the NCAA, and stay tuned for more.